My name is Tristan Doyle, and I am 43 years old. For the past 8 years, I have been a senior account manager at Sterling Solutions, a mid-size firm specializing in B2B technology services. My role here is not just a job, it's the core of my professional identity. I'm known within the company and among my clients for reliability, precision, and a methodical approach to managing complex client relationships. My portfolio consists of 52 high-value accounts, with a combined annual revenue of approximately $5.6 million. That number didn't come about by accident. It reflects years of cultivating trust, understanding client needs in depth, and ensuring contract renewals through attentive service and strategic planning. The morning of October 31st, Halloween, began much like any other. I arrived at the office early, reviewing my day's agenda, which included follow-up calls and some contract renewals scheduled for November. It was a brisk autumn morning, the kind that sharpens your focus. Around 9:15 a.m., I was called into a meeting with my direct manager, Mark Reynolds, the sales director. Mark's reputation was that of a hard-driving executive, deeply focused on cost-cutting and hitting quarterly financial targets. I respected his position, but always sensed a certain transactional coldness in his approach. As I sat down across from him in the glass-walled conference room, Mark's tone was unusually clipped. Without preamble, he informed me that the company was canceling my $95,000 seasonal bonus, citing budget issues. This bonus was never a trivial amount. It had been a consistent, documented part of my compensation package, tied directly to revenue targets and client retention. The cancellation was sudden, and notably without any prior warning or formal notification, which was unusual given the company's bonus policy required at least 60 days' notice for any changes. I recall my response clearly. I maintained a calm and measured demeanor, replying simply, "That's unfortunate." Inside, however, a much more complex process began immediately, a moment of strategic mental calculation. Emotionally, the words stung, but professionally I recognized this was not just about lost bonus money. This was a signal that the company, or at least my manager, was preparing to make moves that could destabilize my position and potentially threaten the client relationships I had carefully nurtured over nearly a decade. I was already familiar with how corporate budget cuts could mask deeper organizational shifts, often involving headcount reductions or the undermining of valuable employees to make room for cheaper labor. I knew that this bonus cancellation was a harbinger of such a maneuver, but I also knew that Sterling Solutions operations depended heavily on my knowledge and relationships. These factors would become crucial leverage points in any professional response. Even though this news could have been a trigger for an emotional reaction, I forced myself to remain composed, leaning heavily on my years of experience dealing with corporate politics and contract management intricacies. My mind immediately began inventorying my resources. The client contracts I had meticulously maintained, the renewal schedules tracked down to the day, the email correspondences that documented promises and adjustments, and the internal policies governing bonuses and employment terms. As I left the meeting with Mark, I took a moment to collect my thoughts in my office. I sat down, opened my laptop, and accessed my encrypted backup folders, secured precisely for moments like this. These backups contained all client contracts, communications, and notes related to account management. I reviewed my calendar to see upcoming renewal deadlines, knowing that any disruption in account handling could trigger client dissatisfaction. This moment, while jarring, was not the end of my journey at Sterling Solutions. Instead, it was the starting point of a strategic professional response. I was determined to handle this situation with the same rigor and precision that had characterized my career to date. The $95,000 bonus was significant, but the real value lay in the client relationships and the contracts I managed, assets that no budget cut could erase, and that I could leverage within the bounds of professional and legal frameworks. As the day progressed, I kept my interactions professional, maintaining a neutral front with colleagues and management while internally mapping out my next steps. The calm, "That's unfortunate," had masked a mind already at work, assessing risks, documenting every detail, and preparing for a measured, strategic course of action. This was a moment to act with both patience and precision, turning an unexpected betrayal into an opening for professional recalibration. In hindsight, that Halloween morning was a pivotal point. The day when I realized that years of careful relationship building and contractual diligence would be tested. But I also understood that such a challenge demanded not emotional reactions, but a tactical and documented professional response. The foundation I had built over 8 years was solid. It was time to use that foundation to navigate the storm ahead. Over the 8 years I spent at Sterling Solutions, my approach was never just about closing deals or hitting quarterly numbers. It was about building lasting relationships grounded in trust and professional excellence, managing 52 high-value accounts, collectively generating $5.6 million in annual revenue, wasn't a byproduct of luck or mere persistence. It was the result of a deliberate, methodical process that I refined continuously. Every client interaction was an opportunity to deepen understanding of their business needs, challenges, and strategic goals. This allowed me to tailor solutions that aligned precisely with their evolving demands, which in turn solidified my role as a trusted advisor rather than just a vendor. My performance metrics reflected this approach, consistently exceeding revenue targets by an average of 12% each year. This wasn't an accident or a fluke, but the outcome of systematic account management practices combined with proactive problem solving. For example, I developed detailed client portfolios that went far beyond surface-level data. These portfolios included exhaustive records of contract terms, critical renewal dates, and a comprehensive history of communications spanning emails, meeting notes, and formal amendments. All these were meticulously organized within our CRM system, which I mastered to ensure every piece of information was accurate, up-to-date, and accessible at a moment's notice. One core aspect that set me apart was my technical proficiency with the CRM and contract management tools. I didn't just use these systems, I optimized them. I created custom dashboards that flagged upcoming renewals or compliance obligations well ahead of time. Automated reminders ensured that no contract slipped through the cracks, and I maintained encrypted backups of every contract and correspondence outside of company servers. This redundancy was a conscious safeguard, born from years of observing how easily critical documentation could become vulnerable during organizational upheavals. The clients I managed were diverse, but shared one common trait. They valued stability and continuity. Many contracts included clauses that made my involvement not just preferable but essential, whether through unique integrations, customized service configurations, or negotiated terms that hinged on my direct oversight. My role required a blend of technical acuity and interpersonal finesse. I was often the intermediary between their technical teams and our delivery units, facilitating smooth operations that ensured contract milestones were met without dispute. This depth of involvement fostered a sense of loyalty that extended beyond standard contractual obligations. Several clients explicitly requested that I remain their point of contact, citing my responsiveness and detailed knowledge as critical factors for their continued partnership. Such endorsements were documented via client satisfaction surveys and formal commendations that I kept as part of my professional portfolio. These acknowledgements weren't just badges of honor. They served as tangible evidence of my value to both the clients and Sterling Solutions. Financially, my compensation package reflected this value. My base salary was $120,000 annually, supplemented by bonuses that sometimes pushed my total earnings well beyond that figure. Among these, the $95,000 seasonal bonus was a key component, structured around hitting specified revenue and retention benchmarks during peak periods. This bonus was consistently awarded on schedule, supported by formal bonus agreements that outlined criteria and payment timelines. I maintained copies of these agreements alongside emails confirming management's commitment to those terms. Despite the financial rewards, what I valued most was the professional capital I had accrued: trust, reputation, and a vast network of client relationships. These intangible assets were cultivated through continuous education, staying abreast of industry trends, and rigorously adhering to contractual and ethical standards. I regularly attended training on compliance and contract law, ensuring I was equipped to navigate complex legal frameworks that govern account management. I was also acutely aware that such value made me a target within Sterling Solutions. Senior management, particularly those focused on cost reductions, saw high-compensation employees like me as prime candidates for budget cuts. Over the years, I had witnessed colleagues with less comprehensive client portfolios being replaced or marginalized. However, my detailed documentation practices and the loyalty I commanded offered me a layer of protection and potential leverage. I knew that any attempt to undermine my position without proper procedure could jeopardize client relationships and expose the company to legal challenges. In essence, my 8 years at Sterling Solutions had been a professional investment, each client contract, every email, and all strategic decisions stacking up as assets. When the unexpected news about the bonus cancellation arrived, it wasn't just a financial blow, it was an affront to the complex ecosystem I had built, but I was prepared. The extensive documentation, my mastery of client management systems, and deep client trust were the foundation upon which I could build a measured, strategic response, a response grounded not in reactionary emotion, but in methodical, professional resolve. Mark Reynolds was under enormous pressure. The sales targets weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet, they were mandates from upper management, and the quarterly financials were under scrutiny. In such an environment, cost-cutting is often the knee-jerk reaction, and unfortunately that meant targeting high-salary personnel. My $120,000 base salary plus bonuses made me a prime candidate. Mark's explicit goal was to trim expenses by cutting my $95,000 seasonal bonus and replacing me with a junior account associate, making approximately 40% less in total compensation. From a purely budgetary standpoint, the math was straightforward for Mark. A junior associate with a salary closer to $72,000 and a significantly reduced bonus package would substantially lower the personnel expense line. It was a typical corporate cost-saving maneuver. Replace experienced, high-cost talent with less expensive, less experienced staff. The underlying assumption, one that Mark seemed to accept uncritically, was that the client accounts I managed could be transitioned seamlessly without significant disruption. However, this assumption was not just naive, it was dangerously short-sighted. Mark overlooked or perhaps underestimated several critical contractual and operational realities. First, there was the matter of the formal bonus policy. Sterling Solutions had a documented procedure requiring at least 60 days written notice before any bonus cancellation or modification. This wasn't a guideline. It was a binding company policy included in our employee handbook and referenced in our compensation contracts. Cancelling my bonus on such short notice violated these terms, opening the company to potential legal exposure. Yet, Mark proceeded without adhering to this process. Even more consequential was Mark's disregard for the non-solicitation clause embedded within Sterling's client contracts. These clauses explicitly prohibited any employee from soliciting clients for a defined period following termination or departure. However, Mark seemed unaware, or chose to ignore, the fact that these clauses provided me with a degree of leverage. My long-standing relationships and trusted position as the primary point of contact for these clients meant that any abrupt disruption could trigger dissatisfaction, contract renegotiations, or even client migration. Mark's cost-cutting move failed to account for the risk of client attrition linked directly to my management. Additionally, Mark failed to recognize my unique role in key client integrations. Many of the contracts required specialized knowledge of technical workflows, bespoke service configurations, and compliance protocols that only I had mastered through years of hands-on management. For example, certain clients depended on custom API integrations that I had personally overseen, ensuring seamless data transfers between our systems and theirs. These integrations were critical to contract renewals and service continuity. The junior associate Mark intended to onboard lacked this expertise, and there was no documented transition plan or technical training scheduled. What Mark didn't realize was that I had proactively maintained encrypted backups of all client contracts and related communications outside of Sterling's corporate servers. This wasn't just prudent record-keeping, it was a strategic safeguard. These backups included signed contracts, amendments, email correspondence evidencing commitments, and detailed notes on service delivery nuances. This archive positioned me to verify any claims of contractual non-compliance from the company and to uphold client expectations independently of Sterling's internal processes. Moreover, my relationships with clients were not transactional, but deeply consultative. Over 8 years, I had built trust that extended beyond contract terms. Clients often reached out to me directly for advice on new projects or operational challenges. Mark's plan failed to consider this client loyalty dynamic. It underestimated the natural inclination of clients to maintain continuity with a trusted advisor rather than accept an unfamiliar replacement. In hindsight, I could see that Mark's strategy was driven by short-term financial metrics without appreciation for the longer-term operational risks. His oversight was twofold: a procedural misstep in bonus cancellation and a strategic miscalculation regarding client dependencies and my role in sustaining them. By ignoring these factors, Mark exposed Sterling Solutions to potentially significant disruptions, including legal challenges, client dissatisfaction, and revenue losses. My immediate assessment was clear: Mark's cost-cutting approach was reckless and incomplete. It ignored critical contractual protections and underestimated the value of professional expertise embedded in my role. This realization informed the strategic course I began to outline internally: a response grounded in documented contractual rights, client loyalty, and professional diligence. At this point, I recognized that Mark's decision wasn't just a managerial error. It was an opening to leverage the detailed records, client relationships, and legal frameworks I had meticulously cultivated. This was not a time for confrontation, but for calculated professional action. The path forward would require measured steps designed to protect my interests, uphold client service continuity, and hold the company accountable to its contractual obligations. In short, Mark's motivation was clear: reduce costs by cutting high compensation and replacing experienced staff with cheaper labor. His critical oversight was his failure to account for the legal, operational, and relational complexities inherent in my role. This disconnect set the stage for the conflict that would unfold and framed the parameters within which I would operate. It was a professional challenge, but also a strategic opportunity to assert my value and protect the portfolio I had dedicated nearly a decade to building. After the meeting with Mark, I knew I had to go beyond gut feeling and carefully dissect the official documentation he had provided. The first document I pulled up was the formal memo announcing the cancellation of my $95,000 seasonal bonus. At first glance, it looked standard enough, dated October 30th, issued by the HR department and citing budgetary constraints as the reason. But I had seen enough corporate policies over the years to know how critical it was to cross-reference these documents against internal procedures. I located the company's bonus policy handbook, an extensive document HR had updated last year, and quickly found the relevant clause. Any bonus cancellation or modification required at least 60 days prior written notice. Reading Mark's memo against that policy revealed an immediate, undeniable violation. The company had given less than 24 hours notice. This wasn't a minor oversight or a miscommunication. It was a breach of a formal agreement embedded in the company's own governance framework. That meant Sterling Solutions was potentially exposed to legal liability for failing to honor the agreed timelines. This was the first concrete piece of leverage I identified, but I didn't stop there. I knew Mark's actions were likely part of a broader plan to reduce expenses by replacing me with less costly personnel. So I discreetly started combing through internal communications and personnel records. A few emails surfaced between Mark and HR, dated over the past 2 weeks, discussing the onboarding of a junior account associate named Rachel. She had a background in sales, but lacked experience with high-complexity accounts or the technical acumen required for some of the contracts I managed. I reviewed Rachel's profile in our internal HR system and cross-checked her access rights. Notably, she did not yet have credentials for our CRM system modules related to contract management or client-specific integrations. This confirmed my suspicion. Mark was quietly preparing a replacement without considering the operational and contractual realities. It was clear this was a cost-cutting move disguised as restructuring, but lacked the necessary support and planning to ensure seamless client service. Next, I shifted focus to the client contracts themselves. My own portfolio was extensive, but I had digital versions of all 52 contracts stored securely, along with detailed notes on critical terms. I examined the clauses in these contracts related to service delivery guarantees, renewal conditions, and key personnel dependencies. Several contracts had explicit language tying service quality and deliverable timelines to my direct involvement and oversight. For example, a major client in the healthcare sector included bespoke data security protocols and integration tasks that I personally managed with their IT department. These weren't trivial clauses. They were binding terms that, if unmet, could void contracts or trigger penalties. This contractual dependency was a major vulnerability in Mark's plan. Replacing me with a junior associate lacking my technical knowledge and client rapport risked non-compliance and potential client attrition. I also found emails exchanged between Mark and select clients, raising concerns about the upcoming personnel change. Some clients questioned whether their tailored service would be maintained without disruption. These emails were not public, but internal copies were accessible to me through our email archiving system. They showed that Mark was fully aware of the risks, but pressed ahead regardless. Mapping these elements together, I began drafting a formal internal assessment. It highlighted 3 critical leverage points. First, the unilateral breach of the bonus policy requiring 60 days' notice. Second, the operational risk of replacing a senior account manager with insufficiently experienced staff. And third, the contractual risk linked to key personnel clauses and client service continuity. I copied this assessment into a secure document, time-stamped it, and backed it up in my encrypted archive. Throughout this review, my internal mindset was calm and measured. I consciously avoided any reaction that might betray desperation or conflict. Instead, I focused on building a factual, evidence-based foundation that I could use to assert my rights and protect my clients. I also started to outline a timeline of events, capturing dates of bonus agreements, notification memos, contract renewals, and internal communications. This would be essential if the matter escalated. At the same time, I reviewed our client relationship management system's access logs. These logs confirmed that I was the exclusive point of contact for all 52 accounts, with no delegation recorded for transition to Rachel or anyone else. This operational fact further emphasized that the company's plan to replace me had not accounted for the continuity needed to maintain these accounts effectively. I realized that Mark's oversight was multifaceted. He had violated internal policy, underestimated client and contract dependencies, and ignored technical onboarding requirements. Each of these missteps increased Sterling Solutions' exposure to contractual breaches and financial penalties. More importantly, they created a professional opportunity for me to respond strategically and protect the portfolio I had worked so hard to build. By mid-morning, with these discoveries in hand, I prepared a mental map of the options ahead. Legal recourse for the bonus policy violation, leveraging client loyalty, and using my documented expertise to counter the replacement strategy. I knew I needed to act within the bounds of professionalism and documented evidence, avoiding emotional escalation, but preparing for a methodical response. The situation was precarious, but clear. The company's unilateral decisions had created vulnerabilities I was ready to exploit to protect my professional interests and client relationships. This phase of discovery and assessment marked the critical pivot from feeling blindsided to taking control. It was no longer just about the lost bonus. It was about defending contractual rights, safeguarding client trust, and strategically positioning myself for whatever came next. The groundwork was laid for a planned, systematic response, one grounded in facts, documentation, and professional integrity. After carefully compiling all my findings, I knew the next step was to bring in expert counsel. I scheduled a consultation with Lisa Porter, a seasoned employment lawyer who specialized in contract disputes and labor law. Lisa wasn't just any attorney. She had a reputation for meticulous attention to detail and a pragmatic approach to complex employment conflicts. I had worked with her in the past on minor contractual clarifications, so I trusted her judgment implicitly. When we met later that afternoon in her downtown office, I arrived prepared with a comprehensive dossier. This wasn't just a collection of random files. It was a carefully organized inventory of evidence, assembled to support a professional, legally grounded case. Lisa and I began by reviewing the formal bonus cancellation memo issued by Sterling Solutions. The document explicitly cited budget issues as the rationale, but Lisa immediately pointed out the glaring absence of the required 60-day notification clause compliance. This procedural violation alone created a strong foundation for contesting the bonus cancellation. Next, we turned our attention to the client contracts I had securely archived. I had encrypted backups of all 52 accounts contracts, including amendments and service-level agreements. Each contract was meticulously indexed by client name, renewal date, and critical clauses such as non-solicitation, key personnel dependency, and service guarantees. Lisa's eyes scanned these documents rapidly, annotating sections relevant to breach of contract and client management obligations. The non-solicitation clauses, though often overlooked in practice, provided a narrow yet significant legal safeguard protecting the client relationships from abrupt disruption or solicitation by competitors. We also analyzed internal communications, emails between Mark, HR, and even some client correspondence that I had compiled. These emails revealed management's awareness of the risks associated with replacing me prematurely and their disregard for these warnings in favor of short-term budget cuts. Lisa emphasized that this pattern demonstrated reckless management decisions, exposing Sterling Solutions to potential liability, especially if client service continuity was compromised. To complement the documentary evidence, I provided CRM access logs illustrating that I was the sole account manager on record for all 52 clients, with no transition plans or delegations made for the junior associate Mark intended to onboard. These technical data points underscored operational realities that management had failed to address. Together, Lisa and I created an evidence inventory checklist, systematically cataloging each critical piece, the formal bonus agreements and related communications confirming bonus entitlement, the company's official bonus policy handbook detailing notification requirements, complete copies of client contracts with highlighted clauses relevant to personnel and service delivery, email threads showcasing management's knowledge and decisions, CRM system logs confirming exclusive account, management rights, encrypted backups of all documentation stored off-site as an additional safeguard, witness statements I had started to collect from trusted colleagues affirming my integral role in client management and awareness of the bonus situation. Recognizing the importance of airtight documentation, I immediately secured additional encrypted backups of all critical files, ensuring multiple copies existed beyond company servers. Using secure cloud storage with end-to-end encryption, I could access these documents remotely, while minimizing risk of deletion or tampering. This redundancy was vital, given the escalating tensions within Sterling Solutions. Simultaneously, I discreetly began confidential outreach to a select group of trusted clients. My objective wasn't solicitation, but gauging their openness to a potential transition should my position become untenable. These conversations were carefully framed, focusing on their satisfaction with service and continuity concerns, without disclosing the full internal conflict. The responses were cautiously optimistic. Many clients expressed frustration with corporate decisions, but remained loyal to me personally. Throughout this process, my internal monologue emphasized strategic patience. I refrained from impulsive actions or confrontations, understanding that building a strong legal and professional case would require time and precision. I reminded myself that emotional reactions could jeopardize my credibility or inadvertently breach non-solicitation agreements. Instead, I focused on methodical evidence gathering and aligning my next steps with legal advice. Lisa advised that, with this inventory in place, we could pursue multiple avenues: negotiations predicated on breach of contract, formal complaints to labor authorities regarding procedural violations, and, if necessary, preparation for litigation. Importantly, she highlighted how the non-solicitation clause, properly interpreted, could protect my ability to maintain client relationships without exposure to legal penalties, provided I proceeded with documented transparency and professionalism. By the end of our meeting, we had established a clear, phased plan. 1. Consolidate all evidence and secure backups. 2. File preliminary legal notices to Sterling Solutions regarding breach of bonus policy. 3. Begin measured client communications to preserve account stability. 4. Monitor company responses and internal developments while maintaining professionalism. 5. Prepare for potential escalation through formal complaints or lawsuit if negotiations failed. Leaving Lisa's office, I felt a renewed sense of control. While the company's actions had blindsided me, my methodical preparation, combined with expert counsel, had created a robust framework to protect my interests and those of my clients. The situation remained delicate, but I was no longer merely reacting. I was orchestrating a strategic, legally informed response grounded in documentation, professional integrity, and calculated patience. The next phase would test my ability to balance diplomacy with assertiveness, ensuring that every move was both legally defensible and aligned with maintaining client trust. The groundwork was laid. The challenge now was to execute with precision. Lisa's confirmation that Sterling Solutions had breached the bonus contract terms was a pivotal moment in solidifying my strategy. When I first laid out the evidence, copies of my bonus agreements, the company's own bonus policy handbook, and the internal memo announcing the cancellation, Lisa immediately identified the fatal flaw in the company's approach: the absence of the required 60-day prior notification. This wasn't merely a procedural oversight. It constituted a material breach of contract, giving me a legally enforceable claim for the $95,000 bonus. Lisa stressed that such policies, when formalized in employee handbooks and referenced in compensation agreements, carry the weight of contract law. The company's failure to comply exposed them to potential damages and regulatory scrutiny. Beyond the bonus, Lisa's expertise illuminated a more consequential dimension to the case: how Mark Reynolds' actions had put Sterling Solutions at risk of significant client losses. We dove deeply into the client contracts I had meticulously archived, focusing on clauses that outlined service guarantees, renewal triggers, and crucially, key personnel dependencies. Many of these agreements contained explicit language tying the successful delivery and renewal of contracts to my direct involvement and oversight. For example, one major healthcare client's contract included stringent data security and compliance requirements, along with technical integration milestones I personally managed. Missing or improper fulfillment of these obligations could invoke breach penalties or even contract termination. Lisa pointed out that Mark's plan to replace me with a junior account manager who lacked specialized knowledge and access credentials effectively endangered these contractual commitments. The absence of any formal transition or knowledge transfer plan meant that Sterling Solutions was gambling with client satisfaction and service continuity. Lisa described this as reckless disregard for contractual liabilities, underscoring that management's awareness, evidenced by internal emails, did not excuse their failure to mitigate these risks. To illustrate my indispensable role, I provided Lisa with technical diagrams and system architecture maps I had developed over the years. These documented the complex API integrations, customized reporting workflows, and security protocols embedded in various client systems. The diagrams concretely demonstrated that my expertise was not interchangeable or easily replicated. Lisa saw this as key evidence supporting the claim that Sterling Solutions was knowingly exposing itself to operational failure by sidelining me without proper safeguards. We also scrutinized the email correspondence I had compiled, which revealed management's cognizance of the precarious situation. Some emails showed Mark discussing potential client attrition with HR, acknowledging the risks but prioritizing cost-cutting. Other exchanges reflected client concerns over the impending account manager change. These communications painted a clear picture of management's negligence and disregard for contractual and service continuity obligations. In addition to documentary evidence, the CRM system access logs played a critical role. These logs confirmed I was the exclusive point of contact for all 52 accounts, with no recorded delegation to the replacement associate. This operational reality reinforced the contractual dependencies and underlined the company's lack of preparedness. Lisa agreed that this bolstered our position by highlighting the operational gap Sterling Solutions was creating. Together, Lisa and I compiled an exhaustive evidence inventory checklist, ensuring every critical document was accounted for and cross-referenced. The checklist included the official bonus agreements and supporting email confirmations of entitlement, the company's bonus policy handbook detailing notification and cancellation procedures, complete copies of all client contracts with salient clauses highlighted, key personnel, non-solicitation and service delivery guarantees, internal email threads showing management's awareness and decisions regarding the bonus cancellation and replacement plan, CRM access logs, verifying exclusive, account management rights, encrypted backups stored securely outside company systems, safeguarding against tampering or deletion, preliminary witness statements from trusted colleagues substantiating my integral role and knowledge of the situation. Recognizing the sensitivity, I immediately secured additional encrypted backups of all critical files to multiple secure cloud locations with end-to-end encryption. This redundancy was essential to prevent any attempt by Sterling Solutions to tamper with or delete records amid escalating tensions. Concurrently, I began discreet, confidential outreach to a small group of trusted clients. These conversations were framed carefully, not as solicitations, but as check-ins focused on their satisfaction and continuity concerns without disclosing internal company conflicts. To my measured surprise, many clients expressed frustration with the sudden bonus cancellation and uncertainty about the replacement. Their loyalty to me as their primary contact was evident, which further validated the leverage I held. Lisa's professional guidance emphasized strategic patience and meticulous documentation. She cautioned against any impulsive moves or overt solicitations that could breach the non-solicitation clauses within contracts. Instead, we discussed a measured approach that would allow me to preserve client relationships legally while asserting my contractual rights. She outlined potential legal avenues: formal negotiation on grounds of breach of contract, filing complaints with labor and employment regulatory bodies for procedural violations, and preparation for litigation if necessary. Particularly, Lisa highlighted the non-solicitation clause's narrow but critical protection, permitting me to maintain client contact post-employment without fear of legal retaliation, provided the interactions were professional and not coercive. By the end of our session, we had crafted a phased plan. 1. Consolidate and secure all documentary evidence and backups to maintain integrity and access. 2. Serve formal legal notices to Sterling Solutions regarding breach of bonus policy and contractual obligations. 3. Initiate measured, confidential client communications to ensure account stability and mitigate attrition risk. 4. Monitor and document all company responses and interactions to build a comprehensive case record. 5. Prepare for escalation through regulatory complaints or litigation should negotiations fail. Walking out of Lisa's office, I felt a renewed sense of control despite the precariousness of the situation. The company's unilateral decisions had been blindsiding, but now I was equipped with a robust, professionally grounded framework to protect my interests and those of my clients. The path ahead required diplomatic agility and legal precision, balancing assertiveness with professionalism to safeguard the portfolio I had spent nearly a decade cultivating. This phase marked a crucial turning point. What had begun as a sudden blow to my compensation transformed into a strategic opportunity to enforce contractual rights and preserve client continuity. The groundwork was laid for a calculated, evidence-based response, one that emphasized systematic justice and professional integrity over emotional reaction. The challenge was formidable, but I was ready to proceed with measured determination. By mid-morning on October 31st, I had taken concrete steps to initiate a formal professional response. The first action was serving legal notice to Sterling Solutions, precisely citing their breach of contract and violation of the company's own bonus policy. The notice referenced the lack of the mandatory 60-day prior written notification as stipulated in the employee handbook and reinforced in my signed bonus agreements. This document was drafted in consultation with Lisa Porter, my employment lawyer, ensuring that every phrase was legally precise, leaving no room for ambiguity or dismissal. The notice explicitly demanded immediate remediation, either payment of the full $95,000 seasonal bonus as originally agreed, or a formal discussion to negotiate a resolution within a strict time frame. I also underscored the operational risks Sterling Solutions was undertaking by attempting to replace me without proper transition, highlighting contractual obligations tied to client service continuity. By framing the communication this way, I aimed to assert my rights firmly, while maintaining a professional tone that reflected my methodical approach. Parallel to delivering the legal notice, I discreetly finalized employment negotiations with Evan Mitchell, Regional Director at Horizon Partners, one of Sterling's key competitors. Evan and I had maintained a professional dialogue over the past few days, aligned on mutual recognition of my expertise and client portfolio value. The contract we signed that afternoon was structured to safeguard confidentiality and ensure a seamless transfer of client relationships, emphasizing uninterrupted service quality, a critical reassurance to both clients and my new employer. The terms of my new employment included a base salary increase of 25%, enhanced performance bonuses linked to account retention, and equity options reflecting the strategic importance of the accounts I managed. This package was the direct result of my documented client portfolio's revenue and the trust I had cultivated over years. Importantly, the contract contained explicit clauses protecting client confidentiality and compliance with non-solicitation restrictions, ensuring my transition was not only lucrative but legally sound. Once these formalities were in place, I began confidentially informing my core client contacts. The communication was crafted with care, professional, clear, and focused entirely on continuity of service and support. I emphasized that while my role was changing, the commitment to their needs remained steadfast. I presented detailed transition plans developed collaboratively with Horizon's account management team, including timelines, points of contact, and escalation paths. This proactive transparency was crucial to mitigating client concerns and reinforcing trust. Throughout these client communications, I documented every interaction meticulously: emails, call logs, meeting notes, all securely backed up in encrypted archives. I was careful to avoid any language that could be construed as solicitation or coercion, adhering strictly to the legal boundaries defined by the non-solicitation clauses. The objective was to preserve relationships without crossing lines that could provoke legal challenges. Meanwhile, within Sterling Solutions, Mark Reynolds remained unaware of the full scope of my actions. His focus was narrowly trained on the replacement onboarding, confident that the junior associate would absorb my responsibilities without disruption. However, the absence of proper knowledge transfer and my exclusive access to critical client integrations left a growing void. Mark's underestimation of these factors created a blind spot that I was strategically leveraging. I maintained professional decorum in all company interactions during this period. I submitted necessary transition documents, responded to routine inquiries, and fulfilled obligations as expected, all while keeping my internal strategy confidential. This balance preserved my reputation as a dependable professional, even as I orchestrated a departure that would impact Sterling Solutions significantly. By the close of business on October 31st, the stage was set for consequential developments. Legal pressure was formally applied, client loyalty was being gently but decisively realigned, and my new position was secured with comprehensive safeguards. The company's assumptions about a smooth transition were about to be challenged, yet from the outside I remained composed and professional, masking the full extent of my strategic maneuvering. In this phase, I consciously avoided premature confrontation or escalation, understanding that timing and controlled disclosure were vital. My methodical documentation and measured communications laid a foundation not just for immediate recourse but for potential negotiation or litigation if necessary. The leverage created by legal notice, coupled with the client transition plans, established a framework where Sterling Solutions faced tangible operational and financial risks unless they reconsidered their approach. Ultimately, this phase marked a critical inflection point, a shift from passive acceptance of managerial betrayal to active, systematic recourse grounded in contractual rights and professional integrity. The next steps would capitalize on this groundwork, intensifying pressure while safeguarding my professional standing and client commitments. The strategic patience and discipline applied here were essential to transforming an unexpected betrayal into an opportunity for controlled transition and professional advancement. By early afternoon on October 31st, the first tangible consequences of Sterling Solutions' abrupt decisions began to surface. Within mere hours of my legal notice and confidential client communications, operational cracks appeared that exposed the company's vulnerabilities caused by their underestimation of both the complexity of my role and the depth of client relationships I managed. Most critically, my replacement, Rachel, was quickly found lacking access to essential system credentials. Despite Mark's confidence in her abilities, she had not yet been granted administrative permissions for the CRM modules that governed client contract management and integration oversight. These were not mere clerical tools. They contained sensitive data, automated workflows, and compliance checkpoints crucial to maintaining service quality and contract deliverables. Without these credentials, Rachel's ability to navigate client-specific configurations was severely hampered. Support tickets began to pile up internally, as delivery teams sought clarifications only I was authorized to provide. This bottleneck caused delays in order processing and disrupted routine communications with several key accounts. Meanwhile, I began to receive discreet messages from some clients expressing unease. A few directly reached out to me over secure channels, email and encrypted messaging apps, concerned about the sudden change in account management and potential service interruptions. These messages were professional, yet tinged with frustration. One major client, responsible for nearly $800,000 in annual revenue, asked for reassurance about ongoing project milestones and compliance deadlines. Another sought confirmation that their customized reporting modules would remain supported, noting that my replacement lacked visibility into the technical nuances we had developed together over years. These client communications confirmed my initial assessment. The loyalty I had nurtured was not just contractual, but relational. My clients valued continuity and expertise, and the company's unilateral personnel decisions jeopardized that foundation. Importantly, I maintained all these interactions within strict professional boundaries, carefully avoiding any language that might be construed as solicitation, consistent with the non-solicitation clauses and legal advice from Lisa Porter. Each message was documented. Screenshots, email headers, timestamps, securely archived to preserve an audit trail, demonstrating my professionalism and compliance with legal constraints. Simultaneously, feedback from the Horizon Partners onboarding team indicated that while we had prepared transition materials, the absence of direct system access and first-hand operational knowledge from Sterling Solutions was creating gaps. This operational friction further underscored the risks Mark had ignored. It became increasingly clear that the company's attempt to replace me overnight without proper transition protocols was not only jeopardizing client satisfaction, but also exposing Sterling to contractual breach consequences. On another front, regulatory bodies acknowledged receipt of my preliminary complaint concerning the bonus cancellation and potential labor violations. The State Labor Department opened an inquiry, requesting documentation of the bonus agreements, company policies, and correspondence. This procedural development added formal pressure on Sterling Solutions, signaling that the dispute was escalating beyond internal corporate channels. Lisa advised me to maintain a clear record of all interactions and continue adhering strictly to professional conduct during this phase. Mark's responses to all these developments became progressively urgent and frankly desperate. Within hours, I began receiving calls on my personal phone, numbers I did not recognize initially, but soon identified as Mark's attempts to reach me. His tone was uncharacteristically conciliatory, offering ad hoc consulting fees and informal arrangements to smooth things over. He implied a willingness to negotiate quietly to prevent further disruption. I refused direct communication, instructing him instead to channel all correspondence through my attorney. This decision was strategic. It ensured a formal record of all interactions and prevented any misunderstanding or misrepresentation. Each voicemail and email received was saved with metadata intact, forming part of the growing dossier. Internally at Sterling Solutions, the atmosphere was tense. Rumors circulated among colleagues about the disruption in the sales department and the high-profile dispute. The junior associate was overwhelmed, unable to cope with the complexity of the accounts and lacking support from management. Client contacts began to express concerns during routine calls, some requesting to verify account management continuity. These early signs of instability were direct repercussions of Mark's miscalculation, which underestimated the indispensable nature of my role and the operational dependencies embedded in my account management. Throughout this period, I remained externally composed and professionally engaged. I continued to submit all necessary transition documents as per company policy and responded to routine inquiries without revealing the extent of my strategic maneuvers. Maintaining this facade was essential to prevent premature escalation and preserve my professional reputation. I was acutely aware that any sign of unprofessional conduct could undermine my position both legally and in the eyes of clients. By the close of business on Halloween, Sterling Solutions was grappling with tangible operational setbacks, delayed order processing, frustrated delivery teams lacking critical information, and restless clients questioning service continuity. My replacement's inability to bridge the knowledge gap was evident, and Mark's attempts at damage control via unofficial channels only highlighted the growing crisis. From the outside, I remained the consummate professional, but internally, I was consolidating these disruptions as leverage points in the broader strategic response. The implications were clear. Sterling Solutions' unilateral decisions had triggered a destabilization that would inevitably pressure management to reconsider their position. The documented violations of bonus policy, combined with the operational and client relationship fractures, created a multifaceted challenge that could not be resolved by superficial fixes. The situation was evolving rapidly, with mounting legal, financial, and reputational risks for the company. My focus remained on meticulously documenting every development, maintaining client trust through measured communication, and coordinating with Lisa to prepare for the next phase of legal and professional action. The seeds of Sterling's destabilization were now firmly planted, with client confidence eroding and internal systems strained. The company's assumptions about a straightforward replacement had proven dangerously flawed, setting the stage for more consequential developments to unfold. By November 5th, the situation had escalated beyond internal negotiations and preliminary legal notices. Equipped with the comprehensive evidence my lawyer, Lisa Porter, and I had painstakingly assembled, I formally filed a lawsuit against Sterling Solutions. The suit detailed two primary claims. First, the breach of contract regarding the unlawful cancellation of my $95,000 seasonal bonus. Second, the consequential damages stemming from Sterling's failure to uphold its contractual obligations related to client account management and service continuity. The lost bonus claim was straightforward, but critical. The company's own bonus policy mandated a minimum 60-day prior written notice for any changes or cancellations. The sudden October 31st cancellation blatantly violated this policy, and the formal memo I had received lacked any legal justification or prior communication. Lisa and I calculated the claim amount to include the full $95,000 bonus, plus interest and penalties totaling approximately $118,000. This figure accounted for additional financial impacts I had suffered due to unexpected loss of anticipated income, stressing my personal finances and contractual expectations. More complex, however, was the $250,000 claim related to client contract breaches. Over the previous days, we had meticulously documented how Sterling's abrupt replacement strategy with an unqualified junior associate compromised critical client relationships. The contracts I managed contained explicit key personnel clauses that tied successful service delivery and renewal guarantees directly to my involvement. By failing to provide proper transition or technical support, Sterling risked, and in several cases suffered, contractual non-compliance, leading to potential penalties, loss of fees, and client churn. Our lawsuit cited documented evidence of Sterling's management being aware of these risks. Internal emails from Mark Reynolds acknowledged the possibility of client attrition and service disruption, yet the company proceeded without mitigation or client communication plans. This demonstrated not only negligence, but reckless disregard for contractual obligations and client trust. The lawsuit emphasized that Sterling's actions were not isolated incidents, but part of a pattern placing the company in breach. Simultaneously, regulatory bodies began formal investigations into Sterling Solutions' labor practices. The State Labor Department had accepted my preliminary complaint and requested detailed documentation of the bonus cancellation and internal policy violations. Lysa and I cooperated fully, providing the bonus agreements, internal memos, and correspondence illustrating the lack of due process. The regulatory inquiries increased pressure on Sterling to respond credibly, adding a layer of external oversight to what might otherwise have remained a private dispute. Meanwhile, client reactions formalized. Several key accounts, representing significant annual revenue streams, submitted written requests to terminate their contracts with Sterling Solutions and transfer their business to Horizon Partners, where I had recently joined. These formal notifications were not impulsive, but calculated decisions based on documented service disruptions, lack of continuity assurances, and confidence in my leadership. The client communications, included as exhibits in our lawsuit, underscored the tangible impact of Sterling's operational failures. Sterling Solutions' internal systems showed increasing strain. Delivery teams reported cascading failures triggered by the junior associates' lack of CRM access and technical knowledge, a bottleneck that delayed project milestones and invoicing. These operational inefficiencies were not abstract problems. They directly affected revenue recognition and client satisfaction, further validating the breach and damages claims. Mark Reynolds, under growing scrutiny, attempted to engage me directly in informal settlement talks. His overtures included offers to reinstate my bonus retroactively and propose reinstatement with enhanced role responsibilities. However, I maintained a consistent professional stance, declining direct communication and directing all correspondence through Lysa. This approach ensured that every interaction was documented, preventing any misunderstanding or perceived goodwill that might undermine the legal claims. My response to Mark was succinct and formal. My attorneys will be in touch. The convergence of legal pressure, regulatory investigation, and client defections placed Sterling Solutions in a precarious position. Our coordinated strategy, combining litigation with measured client transition and regulatory complaints, effectively overwhelmed their management's ability to mitigate the fallout swiftly. The company faced escalating financial exposure from potential damages, operational disruptions, and reputational harm. Throughout this period, I continued to uphold professional integrity, carefully balancing assertiveness with diplomacy. Every communication, whether with clients, legal counsel, or company representatives, was crafted to reinforce my position without crossing legal boundaries or soliciting inappropriately. The documentation trail expanded daily, comprising emails, signed client transfer requests, system access logs, and formal regulatory filings. This phase marked a critical intensification of the conflict. The dispute had moved from internal disagreement to formal legal and regulatory arenas, with measurable financial stakes and clear client consequences. Sterling Solutions was forced to confront the realities of their mismanagement, while I was strategically positioned to protect my interests, preserve client relationships, and assert accountability. The lawsuit's filing on November 5th was not just a legal formality. It was a deliberate strategic maneuver designed to leverage comprehensive evidence of Sterling's contractual breaches and operational failures. It signaled a shift from negotiation to assertive enforcement, backed by regulatory oversight and client validation. The professional rigor and methodical documentation that characterized my approach ensured that this escalation was calculated, legally sound, and aligned with long-term career and financial objectives. My focus remained steady: to navigate this complex professional conflict with measured precision, reinforcing that systematic justice, grounded in contractual rights and client trust, was the path forward. The unfolding developments would continue to test Sterling's management and their ability to respond to the multifaceted pressures now converging upon them. Mark Reynolds' termination came swiftly after the internal review concluded. The company's executive board had convened multiple emergency sessions following the mounting evidence of mismanagement and policy violations. The findings were unequivocal. Mark's unilateral decision to cancel my $95,000 seasonal bonus without the mandatory 60-day notification breached firm policy and exposed Sterling Solutions to considerable legal liability. More critically, his reckless attempt to replace me with an inadequately prepared junior associate without a structured transition plan triggered operational failures and client dissatisfaction. The board cited these failures, alongside his disregard for contractual and ethical obligations, as grounds for immediate dismissal. From a professional standpoint, Mark's removal was hardly surprising. His cost-cutting approach had prioritized short-term financial metrics over long-term client relationships and contract compliance. This miscalculation culminated in a loss of confidence among senior leadership, who recognized the serious risks the company had undertaken under his direction. The termination served as a clear message that contractual and operational due diligence were non-negotiable pillars of Sterling's business model, principles Mark had fundamentally violated. The legal ramifications for Sterling Solutions intensified correspondingly. The lawsuit I filed demanded $1.2 million in combined damages, an aggregation of the contested bonus payments, estimated financial losses from client contract breaches, and consequential damages tied to operational disruptions. This settlement figure accounted not only for my direct losses, but also for the potential cascading financial impact stemming from diminished client trust, service interruptions, and regulatory scrutiny. Facing mounting evidence and the firm's increasing vulnerability, Sterling's legal counsel engaged in settlement negotiations to mitigate further reputational damage and limit exposure. Concurrently, state labor authorities levied regulatory fines totaling $150,000 against Sterling Solutions. The fines reflected violations of employee compensation policies and procedural lapses in bonus administration. These penalties underscored the seriousness with which regulatory bodies viewed the company's failure to adhere to labor laws and internal governance. The public record of such fines further eroded Sterling's standing within the industry, signaling systemic compliance weaknesses beyond this isolated incident. The negative publicity generated by these developments attracted attention from industry media and trade publications. Articles detailing the lawsuit, regulatory actions, and Mark Reynolds' dismissal circulated widely, critically framing Sterling Solutions as a company struggling with ethical governance and employee relations. Analysts highlighted the broader implications for mid-sized technology service firms, emphasizing the risks inherent when leadership sacrifices contractual fidelity for short-term cost savings. This coverage contributed to a perceptible decline in Sterling's client and investor confidence. Within Sterling Solutions, the fallout extended beyond Mark. Other employees, emboldened by the public revelations, began stepping forward with parallel grievances involving labor policy violations and mismanagement. These employees cited similar experiences of abrupt bonus cancellations, inadequate transition support, and disregard for contractual procedures. The accumulation of grievances suggested a systemic culture problem, prompting Sterling's leadership to announce an internal restructuring plan aimed at addressing compliance, employee engagement, and operational oversight. Mark Reynolds' personal and professional consequences were severe and swift. Following the internal review and termination, the industry's regulatory body suspended his professional license pending further investigation into ethical violations related to his managerial conduct. This suspension effectively paused his career trajectory within account management and sales leadership circles. Simultaneously, mounting legal fees and reputational damage strained his financial standing, limiting his capacity to pursue alternative employment without significant professional rehabilitation. In contrast, my own trajectory took a markedly positive turn. I maintained a laser-focused commitment to consolidating my expanded responsibilities at Horizon Partners. The company recognized the strategic value of the 52 accounts I transitioned, and I was entrusted with growing the portfolio further. This new role combined increased responsibility with enhanced compensation and equity participation, reflecting both my proven expertise and the tangible revenue impact derived from the client base I brought. The professional validation I received through this transition reinforced the efficacy of my systematic, evidence-driven response. Throughout this turbulent period, I remained vigilant in preserving professional integrity and strategic composure. I sustained meticulous documentation of all developments, interactions, and communications, related to Sterling Solutions' response and the broader industry repercussions. This ongoing record not only supported potential future legal or regulatory actions, but also underscored a commitment to transparency and accountability. The consequences of this episode rippled through Sterling Solutions and the wider industry. The company's public restructuring acknowledged the need for enhanced adherence to contractual and employment policies, alongside improved risk management frameworks. Competitors and peer firms took note of the case, prompting revisions in client-manager contracts, bonus policy enforcement, and transition protocols. The industry discourse increasingly emphasized the importance of balancing cost considerations with contractual and ethical obligations, a shift catalyzed in part by the very public unraveling of Sterling's management missteps. In summary, Mark Reynolds' termination, alongside the substantial lawsuit settlement and regulatory fines, marked a significant professional reckoning for Sterling Solutions. The case exposed critical vulnerabilities in management oversight and labor compliance, triggering both internal reform and broader industry reflection. While Sterling confronted reputational and financial setbacks, I advanced professionally, leveraging systematic documentation, legal acumen, and client trust to convert a managerial betrayal into a platform for career growth and industry leadership. The situation remained dynamic, but the professional consequences were clear indicators of accountability prevailing in complex corporate disputes. By the time the court rendered its decision, the months of systematic preparation, meticulous documentation, and strategic legal action culminated in a definitive professional vindication. The judgment awarded me a total of $365,000, an amount encompassing the lost $95,000 seasonal bonus, accrued interest, damages related to the client contract breaches, and coverage for legal fees incurred throughout the proceedings. This sum was significant, not just financially but symbolically, affirming the enforceability of contractual rights and the professional standards I had upheld amid Sterling Solutions' abrupt and unjust actions. The breakdown of the award reflected the multifaceted nature of the dispute. The primary component was the lost bonus compensation, which the court recognized as contractually guaranteed under the company's bonus policy, explicitly citing the mandatory 60-day notification clause that Sterling Solutions had flagrantly ignored. Interest and penalty calculations accounted for the financial disruption caused by the sudden cancellation, reinforcing the legal principle that unilateral contract modifications without due notice are impermissible. The damages portion addressed the operational and reputational harm resulting from Sterling's failure to maintain continuity in client account management, which had caused measurable financial losses, contract terminations, and client defections. Additionally, the court took note of the exhaustive evidence I had presented. The encrypted backups of client contracts, detailed CRM access logs confirming exclusive account management, internal communications revealing management's knowledge of risks, and documented client transfers. This comprehensive evidentiary mosaic substantiated the claim that Sterling Solutions' leadership had acted negligently and recklessly, breaching not only employment agreements, but also client service commitments. The ruling underscored that these breaches had tangible financial consequences, warranting substantial compensation. Parallel to the litigation outcome, the labor authorities finalized their administrative investigation into Sterling Solutions' compliance with employment and compensation laws. The investigation corroborated the procedural violations relating to bonus cancellation protocols, resulting in a $150,000 fine levied against the company. This regulatory penalty served as a formal rebuke, signaling increased scrutiny of Sterling's internal governance and adherence to labor standards. The fine was publicized through official channels, further impacting Sterling's standing within the industry and among its workforce. In response to the regulatory findings, Sterling Solutions was compelled to undertake significant revisions to its bonus policies and employee notification procedures. The company initiated a comprehensive review of its compensation frameworks, aiming to align practices with statutory requirements and prevent recurrence of similar disputes. This process involved updating employee handbooks, implementing stricter compliance oversight, and establishing clearer communication channels for bonus-related changes. Public statements from Sterling's HR leadership acknowledged the necessity of these reforms, though they stopped short of admitting broader systemic issues. The repercussions extended deeply into Sterling's organizational culture and managerial ranks. Mark Reynolds, whose decisions had precipitated the crisis, was blacklisted within industry circles. The findings of ethical violations related to his management conduct led to his professional ostracism, effectively ending his career trajectory in sales leadership. This outcome was highlighted in industry forums and professional associations, serving as a cautionary tale about the consequences of neglecting contractual obligations and client-centric stewardship. Strategically, Horizon Partners, my new employer, capitalized on the successful client transitions. The acquisition of the 52 accounts I brought on board represented a substantial revenue increase and strengthened Horizon's competitive position in the market. The seamless continuity of service and the client loyalty I maintained became a case study internally, illustrating the critical importance of relationship-driven account management. This advantage translated into expanded business opportunities, reinforcing Horizon's reputation for stability and client satisfaction. The broader industry took note of the case's implications. Competitors and peer firms reassessed their contracts with account managers, specifically tightening clauses related to bonus entitlements, notification requirements, and non-solicitation protections. Many organizations instituted enhanced training on contractual compliance and client transition planning to mitigate risks highlighted by the Sterling Solutions incident. The case became a reference point in professional development seminars and legal discussions, emphasizing accountability and the balancing of cost management with contractual fidelity. Reflecting on the professional dynamics revealed by this episode, it was clear that the enforcement of clear, documented agreements and the strategic maintenance of client trust were paramount. The integrity of account management roles depended not only on personal competence, but on the formal protections that structured those relationships. The case underscored how breaches of these frameworks could lead to significant financial and reputational fallout, while disciplined adherence could safeguard careers and client portfolios alike. This judgment and its surrounding industry impact reaffirmed the value of methodical, evidence-based professional conduct in navigating complex corporate disputes. It highlighted that contractual rights are enforceable and that organizations must respect procedural requirements to maintain operational stability. For me, the case validated years of diligent relationship building and contractual oversight, demonstrating that systematic justice could prevail over managerial expediency. The situation remained professionally dynamic, with ongoing adjustments within Sterling Solutions and ripple effects in the sector. Yet the legal and regulatory outcomes served as key milestones, signaling a shift towards greater accountability and sophistication in employment and client management practices. My role in this process, anchored in calm professionalism, comprehensive documentation, and strategic patience, became a benchmark for peers facing similar challenges in the competitive landscape of account management and corporate governance. Today I hold the position of Senior Account Director at Horizon Partners, a role that came with a 25% increase in base salary and equity options, currently valued at $250,000. This compensation package reflects not only my expertise, but also the strategic value of the client portfolio I transitioned, now expanded to 75 accounts, including the original 52 I managed at Sterling Solutions. This growth in responsibility underscores the recognition Horizon Partners has given to the professional capital I invested over nearly a decade. My day-to-day responsibilities blend high-level client engagement with oversight of account managers who support these relationships, ensuring seamless service continuity and further portfolio expansion. Reflecting professionally, this transition is more than a career advancement. It is a testament to the power of systematic preparation and disciplined execution amid corporate adversity. The years I spent meticulously documenting every client contract, correspondence, and renewal detail were not merely administrative tasks. They were strategic investments that fortified my position against unexpected managerial decisions. The encrypted backups, comprehensive contract annotations, and proactive relationship management created a resilient framework that could withstand corporate attempts at unilateral changes. One critical lesson learned through this ordeal is the indispensable value of understanding the fine print within employment and client contracts. Too often, professionals focus solely on performance metrics and revenue targets, without appreciating how legal and procedural safeguards can become essential tools for protecting one's interests. For me, the 60-day bonus notification clause and the non-solicitation agreements embedded in client contracts became pivotal elements of my defense. They framed the parameters within which I could operate confidently and assert my rights without compromising ethical boundaries. Equally important was the adoption of a measured professional demeanor throughout the conflict. By avoiding emotional reactions, public confrontations, or premature disclosures, I maintained credibility with clients, colleagues, and legal counsel. This calm professionalism reinforced trust and allowed me to maintain control over the narrative, ensuring that every communication, whether with clients transitioning accounts or with Sterling Solutions management, was precise, legally compliant, and strategically timed. The structured collaboration with my employment lawyer, Lisa Porter, was another cornerstone of success. Together, we crafted a phased strategy that balanced assertiveness with patience, leveraging legal frameworks alongside relationship management. This approach prevented escalation beyond what was necessary and preserved my reputation as a reliable industry professional, even as I navigated complex negotiations and legal proceedings. My current role at Horizon Partners benefits immensely from these experiences. The expanded portfolio requires not only maintaining existing client satisfaction, but also identifying growth opportunities within each account. I lead a team trained to operate within the rigorous standards I uphold, embedding contractual compliance and client-centered service as core principles. The equity options reflect my vested interest in Horizon's long-term success, aligning personal and corporate objectives. This alignment motivates me to innovate account strategies, optimize service delivery, and mentor junior managers in the professionalism that safeguarded my own career. Beyond individual gains, this episode has reshaped my professional philosophy. It underscored that success in client management is as much about legal and procedural literacy as it is about interpersonal skills and sales acumen. The ability to systematically document, analyze, and leverage contractual and operational data is a competitive advantage in today's corporate environment. It also highlighted the importance of building enduring client trust, not merely transactional relationships, so that clients are confident to follow leadership through organizational changes. Industry recognition has followed naturally. Horizon Partners leadership often cites the client transition as a benchmark for best practices under challenging circumstances. This acknowledgement has led to invitations to speak at professional forums and contribute to white papers on client portfolio management, contractual risk mitigation, and dispute resolution. These platforms allow me to share insights gained firsthand and promote a culture where strategic patience and documentation are viewed as essential components of professional excellence. In retrospect, the journey from unexpected betrayal to professional vindication and advancement was not straightforward. It demanded resilience, a disciplined mindset, and unwavering commitment to methodical action. Yet it also proved that systematic justice, rooted in robust documentation, legal understanding, and professional integrity, can transform adversity into opportunity. The Halloween morning when my bonus was abruptly cancelled could have been a career setback, but instead it was the moment that catalyzed a strategic breakthrough. As I continue to grow my career at Horizon Partners, I remain vigilant about these lessons. I encourage peers and emerging account managers to prioritize comprehensive contract management, cultivate authentic client loyalty, and engage legal expertise proactively when necessary. These elements form the foundation for navigating complex corporate landscapes where managerial decisions may not always align with professional value. Ultimately, this experience reaffirmed that a calm, professional, and systematic approach is the most effective response to corporate challenges. It is not reactive emotion, but strategic documentation and measured action that secure superior outcomes. The professional legacy I now build is grounded in these principles: transforming a moment of betrayal into a sustained trajectory of growth, recognition, and leadership within the industry.